Every step that you take in this world, every interaction you have is part of fixing, of making healthy the educational culture in America. So, what does this class give us as far as solutions? It gives us this map. What are our natural human inclinations? What do we want? What do we seek? What do we do?
Learning.
Right, we want to learn, and I think what you were pointing at was we want to learn for a better life. We like things that are real, things that help us, that we can see actual benefit from. We like to be part of a community. We like the fact that community spurs us and makes us better versions of ourselves. And that's the other thing that is sort of natural, is the I, the identity. We like to have a sense of who we are and how the learning that we're getting is contributing to the betterment of ourselves. Then we talk about ideas. When we are talking about educating children, what do we value?
Hard work.
Success, security, freedom.
What does that mean, Melody?
I don't know, being able to voice your opinions and doing what you want.
In the rosy shaded glasses, we have at least security, success, hard work, equality, opportunity, freedom. These are things that we care about, things that we value, and things that we want to nurture through our schooling systems. What's the educational schooling plan that comes out of this?
Public, or what's the other word?
Is it common?
Compulsory? I don't know what that means, but you were saying.
Public, common, compulsory, and universal. Now, you were asking, what does compulsory mean? Essentially, that comes out of the idea of equality and opportunity. We say, look, we want equal opportunity for everybody. Education is what allows you to be an informed, contributing citizen. And you may not know that as a kid. So we need to make sure that it is mandated that everybody get educated. Because we're a democracy where everybody's opinion is important. But if no one has an informed opinion, you're not going to have a successful democracy. That's what compulsory means. And then our applications. This is where things have gotten sort of messy, right? And you know what? Because we're talking about what are the fixes? What have we done right in American education? Something that you said, yeah, why don't we still do that?
We made that available for all, free education.
Ladder learning has its problems, but like progression of learning, I think, is a good idea. That you like work from the spot and are supposed to get somewhere with it.
Like all the things that we say in this class are wrong are also right in some ways. Like,
Good intentions.
yeah.
Absolutely. It's not a problem of what we're doing, it's a matter of how we're doing it. When people come into this class, a lot of people come in saying, it's broken, we do this wrong, and we're over-tested, and under this, and well, what's the good part of that? Like, why did we start doing it in the first place? I think you focused in on the applicability of it, the like real world.
Community.
What is that?
Was it that you're working together and like to go towards an education, I guess.
All right, so classroom community. And that's something that I think, again, a lot of teachers try to do, and a lot of times it falls apart, but it's like the awareness thing is what's missing, is that they let it go without recognizing that it's going. All of a sudden you have students competing against each other and fighting for grades and hiding their textbooks and their tests from each other, and at some point you're just like, well, that's the way we do it. And you don't think, well, is that healthy? Is that good for learning? Has anybody in this class ever had a classroom where teachers have gotten everybody together and for a moment the focus is not on the grade, but on figuring something out, and it just feels good?
Yeah, my favorite learning experience, how like it was a world religion class, and like kind of the fun aspect was that no one in the class, of like 200 people you could tell, knew anything about like the 12 religions worldwide that we were learning about. So half it was literally just trying to understand the concepts, and you could see people like actively engaging, really like looking up, trying to figure it all out, rather than just like, oh, writing down the minimum, or just, there was no easy way around understanding it. So essentially there was no easy way to get the grade, so it made everyone kind of really have to try to understand it, which is why I like it so much.
So that idea of a learning-centered community. Other things, something else that hit you as, yeah, that's what we should be doing.
Like student interest driven.
Yeah, kind of like adaptive.
Checking ourselves, make sure that we're not judging people based on what education they have.
I think that's a response.
Sure, yeah. Taking that moment to say, hey, what am I doing? How am I interacting with people? That self-awareness that maybe we don't have when we're just focusing in on a test. Other responses, what are we aiming toward? What are the things that we want to nurture and that we can nurture?
Maybe like the grade system, like how to give feedback.
So one of the responses to a healthy, positive educational system is that it creates some sort of self-awareness. It makes people aware of what they're doing and what their part is in a society and what their purpose can be. And another thing that comes out of education when it's working right is that you have useful feedback, that the tests are not something that cause fear and vomiting and judgment, but they're something that causes awareness and conversation and development and allow the teacher to adapt the classroom. What are some other good human responses that come from good educational encounters?
I was thinking about like positive, not even positive, just like healthy interactions, I guess you would say. Because that made me think of like the interview that I had, the person I interviewed talking about like their professors, where they were like, oh, like my favorite ones was the ones that I felt comfortable like talking to, like I didn't feel stupid. Like some teachers would make me feel stupid. I just felt like lesser than them. So I never wanted to like go up to them and be like, yeah, I'll have a conversation with you. But like their best experiences were when there were like good interactions between the student and the teacher.
So
yeah.
Healthy interactions.
Yeah.
Did you write the one about your boyfriend learning to surf? Was this? So that's a healthy interaction. And there was the guy working on cars. That was Carly's. But you both had this beautiful moments of father son. It was a healthy interaction because it wasn't just learning oriented, but it was accepting and safe and supportive. Yes, you're laughing like you want to say something.
Well, it's kind of funny because the way he describes it is like that, but like when you actually watch them work on cars together, his dad's kind of mean. Like it's kind of scary. So I feel like from an outside perspective, it can be seen differently than how it's like actually happening between them.
Does he see it as positive?
Yeah, he's like, oh, it's fine.
That's right. They did a study showing that methodologically it's problematic to watch classrooms and as a researcher make judgments about classroom interactions, because if you're not in the classroom interaction, you don't actually know what it feels like to be talked to by the teacher. You don't know what it feels like to talk with the teacher. But right, this is what we're talking about. These healthy interactions, maybe it's not something you see, but it's something that they as learners feel. This feeling of, I trust you, I accept you, and no matter how harsh it may look on the outside, this is a positive learning experience for me. And that's where that useful feedback comes in too. Is like teachers need those opportunities for students to say, this isn't working for me. Those moments for students to say things and for me to get inside of your perspective and to adapt my teaching for your learning experience. Other human responses that come out of healthy learning environments. What you want to see in the classrooms as a response to the way you're teaching. Yeah.
I guess a lot of like discussion and students challenging their ideas, because everybody should be constantly trying to have an open mind. And
like in Sean's number, that girl who like helped Sean, she helped Sean articulate it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't agree, but I think she like saw where he was coming from.
I understand where you're coming from,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
if that's odd and even, then every number can be odd and even, and then why are we even here having this discussion?
Yeah, that idea of self-driven discussion and challenge and change, right? The motivation from within people to be learning. If you are cracking a whip and forcing people to do things, then you know that that's not what you in your head see as a healthy educational encounter. You want people to some extent to be driven. Of course you're there to encourage them, but you want to see some sign that they're driving themselves. That is how you know that their educational experience is going to go beyond the classroom, beyond where you're pushing, that they'll still be thinking and growing based on what you did. That's a successful educational encounter. Yeah.
Well, I just have a question. How do you push somebody to be self-driven if they really don't give a crap about what you're teaching? Like, considering that I would like to teach math, there's some people who just flat out are like, I'm not good at math, I'm never going to be good at math, like, screw this.
Yeah.
Like, I was in a classroom, and I went up to this kid, and I was like, oh, why aren't you doing your homework? He was like, I'm stupid, I just can't do it. And that was like pretty much it for him. And even the teacher was like, yeah, basically I check in with him to make sure he's fine every once in a while, but I let him do his thing. It was like, how do you drive people to be passionate and care about something that they really don't care about and they think is completely unnecessary?
Well, no, there are a lot of reasons a kid would say, like, I'm stupid, I can't do this. Because I used to say things like that when I knew damn well, like, I wasn't. There's a lot of reasons a kid would say that. And it's not always because they just have no interest whatsoever in doing math.
Shut down at an early age, probably, something like that.
I mean, I'm not allowed to do anything. I'm a volunteer. I'm here for 3 months. But to see a kid who's completely discouraged from even trying just because he figures he's not going to be able to do it and the teacher's fine with it, it's like...
Yeah.
I think a lot of kids have problems seeing like real world applications in a lot of classes. So they don't really feel like they need to
Sorry,
learn.
this is like very specific for what we're talking about.
No, it's absolutely not. I think it talks about this in general. Even when we have cultural habits, cultural ways of doing things, you can always depend on human beings' natural inclination. That you want something that's relevant to you, that you want something that builds your ideal self, your identity, your sense of connection in a community. Those are the kind of things that you can be looking for. And every time you watch something like that, you can either look at it and get disheartened and say, oh man, education's still broken and there's no way I can fix it. Or you can take it as a learning opportunity. Say, what is this teacher doing? What are the effects it's having on the student? If I were in this situation, what would I do different? How would I do it differently? And how would I know it's working? And so for example, you said, how do you get a student enthusiastic about something when they're not enthusiastic about it? We hear the same thing for every single subject. You hear it for math. I'm not good at math. I'm not a math person. Math is not me. Subject doesn't equal me. This equation summarizes everybody in some regard. I have said I am not a math person, totally a writing person, totally an art person, not a math person. But then I'm using this sign, which means that some part of me likes equations, likes figuring out how things connect to each other. So maybe you use that little seed and say, hey Josh, you see that sign you used? That's a math sign. Let's talk about that. When I taught the writing class, did I tell this story? The first day of class, I walked in and I said, how many people in here don't like writing? 6 hands went up. I said, what do you like, what do you like, what do you like? And I focused the rest of the class. One of the guys was an engineer. He's my LinkedIn buddy now. But at the end of the class, he came to me and he's like, dude, I didn't like writing, but you connected it to what I'm interested in. Most students in the class, you're not going to have to worry about. But there are going to be 6 who are problems. You focus in on them, you give them that extra attention, and the rest of the people, you just make a good class. You just frame a good educational encounter. And when you have problem people, you give them that love, you give them that attention. That father teaching to surf or father teaching to drive, you give them that extra little bit of connection that makes them feel like at least the classroom is a good place. And maybe by the last day of class, they'll be like, well, you know what? I've had so much good time being surrounded by math ideas. Maybe math's not so bad. It's the same thing with art. So many people come in and say, I'm not artistic. But like, when have you had the opportunity? A lot of people, the reason that they're not engaged is just that they haven't had the opportunity. And it's your chance as a teacher to address those things. Does that make sense? There are small, grounded ways that you can make small, positive differences. There is no such thing as a perfect school. There is no such thing as a perfect educational system. But there is such thing as a growing, developing school. And that is something that we can always be a part of. We can always be making things better.
There's a school in Santa Barbara that has 2 Montessori classrooms in their school. It's like official Montessori. And it's like crazy how it works. Like the kids run the class. It's like one little girl comes up and she's like, this is what we need to do for the day. Certain kids respond better to that kind of environment. Like some kids like wouldn't do well in that.
I think the point that this conversation is bringing us to, this basic fact. People make sense. The way that we do things is a result of our nature interacting with even this boil down is very complicated. But people within that system make sense. And if students are being frustrated, it's not your bad and it's not their bad. It's just the way that they are in that given circumstance. And you can't change the person, but you can change the educational environment. And everybody is going to be a part of that. Whether you want to or not, you're going to have kids. If you don't have kids, you are going to be an uncle or an aunt. You can be that person that the kid comes to because they can't trust their parents with this information. They don't feel safe, but they feel safe around you, and you can be a part of their education. We will all be a part of other people's education and of the overall educational experience in this country. And so if we're moving it in the right direction, even a little bit, together, that makes a change. And over time, that change gets bigger and bigger because culture is not static. We do not have the educational systems we used to have. And 10 years, 20 years from now, they, again, will not be the same educational systems. And the kids growing up in those educational systems will think that's the way education always was. But no, it's the educational system that we made. And so we're making that new educational system. And that, I hope, gives you a sense of power. And a little bit of hope. Because you're good people. You're good people and you make sense. And you can help the world be a little better for other people. Anyway, thank you.
So,